When my friend Joel was 16, he had a near-death experience which changed his life. And he went from being a tearaway kid who was expelled from his high school to being a passionate, dedicated Christian. He very intentionally chose God and chose to be a follower of Jesus. And he was serious and earnest about praying, about reading the Bible, about understanding Jesus, about forgiveness, about doing what's right, about growing in virtue and working for justice. But one thing he couldn't bring himself to do was that he would never sing worship hymns. He just kind of found it too grating. And he said, I don't need to, this is not important, this is not what following Jesus is about. But I knew there was something kind of missing there. And it was only a couple of years later that something shifted in Joel's heart. And all of a sudden, he began to sing hymns at church, sing worship songs wherever worship songs were being played. And I noticed that in Joel and pointed out to me, he said, yeah, something's changed in me. And what had changed was he'd surrendered further. Because to sing worship hymns, although we can just sing along with any song, but to truly sing praise to God is to surrender our hearts to God, to say, God, you are worth this, you are worthy. That's where the term worship comes from, of worthiness. To say that I'm here and God, you are so far above me, so far beyond me, that all I can do is open my lips to speak of you and sing of you. I wonder if Joel reminds you of you. I wonder if you're a person who finds it hard to sing praise, to be exuberant in speaking or singing praise to God. Because it doesn't come naturally to us. I think especially as Australians, we are a culture who consider ourselves to be egalitarian. We like all being equal. We are not a culture who revere our elders in a particular way. We're a culture that kind of doesn't like tall poppies, and we have a certain gladness when people who appear to be the rich and the famous and the best somehow get lopped off. We have a little bit of a craving for royal scandals and celebrity gossip because those things kind of give us a chance to have some power or insight into these people who at first seem so far above and beyond us. We don't like people being better than us. But to worship God is a frank acknowledgement, God, you are better than me. You are so far beyond me. Because it's one thing to follow Jesus, and especially to follow Jesus' values and his teaching and to work for justice, and these are good, important things. But there's something else about letting go and saying, God, I let go of my sense of myself. I want to hand myself over to you because you are greater. You are more. That's what worship really is. And that's what we see modeled in the three wise men, the Magi, who visit Jesus. Their story of them coming to visit Jesus is something that I think we know so well from Christmas carols and other stories. We have statues in our church showing the wise men with camels coming to visit Jesus. But listen to what they do. That when they come to the city looking for Jesus, we're told they approach and say, we're looking for the king and we have come to do him homage, or translated as, we have come to worship him. And so they know that they want to acknowledge this king as someone incredible, someone great. When they finally come to Jesus, we hear that they kneel down before him, or they bow down before him. This gesture, this act of worship, of placing ourselves lower because somebody else is higher. That's what kneeling down really does. And so we're told that they then give Jesus these gifts of gold being for a king, frankincense being for a deity, because incense was burnt in worship, and then also myrrh being for someone who would suffer and die, and that prefigures Jesus' later death on the cross. But these wise men, these Magi, whoever they are, and we don't know much about them, they had come to worship Jesus. Their travel, their gifts, their kneeling down, and their stated intention was to come and worship Jesus. And I want that to be what we do this year in our church as well, that we would intentionally worship Jesus. That we go beyond just admiring Jesus, being a fan of his, liking his values, wanting to work for his values, or caravans that seem to pick up the Christian message, to truly worshiping Jesus from our hearts. So how do we do that? Well, I think there's a few, there's probably maybe 4 ways that even just in our church service, in Mass, that we can do it. And the first is the very fact that you come, that your coming to Mass is an act of worship. You could say, I can stay at home, I can be a good person, I can pray from home, I can read the Bible, I can go out and do service without going to Mass, and that's absolutely true. But coming to Mass is itself an act of worship. So that's a really important one for us to do and continue to do. The second one, though, is for us to really make this such an important act of worship that we wouldn't dare be late. that we actually plan our day around, I need to work out my timing so I can get here and be here at the very start, if not before, so I can arrive and be centered and ready to begin when that first hymn begins at Mass. I am there and I am present. We are a really good parish, Epping, Carlingford. Not many people leave after communion. Some parishes, lots of people leave after communion, which is so rude. It's kind of like finishing a meal at a guest house and then just walking off from the table before anyone else is finished. For us to be there to the end of Mass says we are a community and we all are in this together. And we mostly do that pretty well. But lots of us kind of come late lots of the time. And I know things happen and sometimes things go wrong, but most of us can plan ahead to try and get around that, to say, no, I give myself the extra 5 or 10 minutes to say, God, you're worth it. You're worth me not coming late for this. For a job interview or something that was really important where we recognized that the interviewer was someone who was more important than me or had some authority over me, I would do anything I could to not be late. Let's make Mass this year of the same importance. The next thing is our body language. That we hear that the wise men knelt down to worship Jesus, and kneeling is such an act of worship. So we deliberately kneel during Mass. That's our Mass is scaffold to let us have kneeling. I like to say, why do we sit and stand and kneel in Mass? Well, we stand to proclaim, we sit to listen, and we kneel to worship. So I invite you to consider that when you kneel in Mass this next time, to think, I am kneeling because I'm worshiping you, God. I'm worshiping you, Jesus. You may see even people in church, I know there's a couple of people, particularly at Epping, who after Mass will come down the front of the church and they will kneel down in front of the altar on their own, and sometimes even prostrate themselves, lie down on the floor. Such a beautiful gesture of worship. I'm not saying we all have to do that, but to recognize and respect those people who really, have gestures of worship which are so profound and so giving. And then the very last one is our singing of our hymns, to join in with singing. So we go beyond being like Joel was in his first couple of years of being a Christian, where he was doing all the right things and all the good things, but hadn't quite let go. He hadn't quite let go of that sense of self-sufficiency. But we let go and say, I will sing, and whether the music's good or not, whether I like this song or not, to say, I will sing this, God, because you deserve it. That's what worship is. We wouldn't imagine going to a birthday party and everyone sings happy birthday and we sit there with our arms folded and not sing. That would be such an insult to the person who we've gone to visit. I think not singing in Mass, sitting there with our arms folded, that's kind of the same thing. Doesn't matter whether we have a good voice or not. Someone once said, if you have a good voice, you can sing at church and thank God. If you have a bad voice, you can get him back by singing. Now, not into getting God back, but if you don't consider yourself a good voice, don't worry. Your willingness to kind of open your voice and maybe be off tune and maybe having the person next to you go, oh my goodness, they're not in tune. That's you being humble enough to worship God no matter what. It's not you showing off your good voice. It is you worshiping God. And chances are, the person next to you, they're probably not much better than you at singing either. If half the congregation is a bit sharp and half's a bit flat, we all level out. When we all sing together, it sounds beautiful to God. And that's what we do in worship. So I invite you this year, let's take our cue from these Magi, these wise men or kings, whoever they are. Let's come and worship Jesus together.